You're listening to The Tide Pod, hosted by your friendly neighborhood PhD. Hi, everybody. It's another episode of The Tide Pod, and today I'm joined by a special guest, EJ Scott. And I thought we'd talk a little bit about, his journey and share stories and kind of a back and forth question and answer session. So thanks for being on, EJ. I'm really excited to have you.
Thanks for having me. I want to compliment you on the pun title of your podcast. The Tide Pod is very clever.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That three-letter rhyming name is kind of a plus a lot. So yeah. But no, first I thought if I could just have you give a little bit of background on yourself and what you're involved in, and just a brief summary of kind of what you've been up to.
Oh gosh. Well, originally I'm from Long Island, New York. Born and raised, and I've been living here in Los Angeles for the better part of, well, this summer it'll be 22 years since I moved out. Um, I live with my wife and my son and my three dogs, and I have an eye disease called choroideremia that's
Mhm.
degenerative and hereditary, and it's causing me to go blind. It runs in my family, and let's see, I moved out here to be an actor in 2003. Mostly, I did improv comedy on
Nice.
stage, and I don't get to do that as often as I'd like to these days, unfortunately. But
Yeah. Is that something you'd like to get into eventually again on the
yeah,
comedy type?
I
Yeah.
love it. A couple of friends of mine from LA moved to Montana and started an improv comedy stand-up sketch theater there in Bozeman, Montana, called
Oh,
the
nice.
Last Best Comedy Theater, and they had a comedy festival this past fall, like September, I think it was,
Mhm.
and I went there and did three shows in 3 nights, and it was so much fun. And I haven't done shows in years. It
Yeah.
was such a great community and great audience and great players, and I just had a blast. I'll probably go again this year if I'm
That
able.
sounds great. Yeah, I love stand up and humor like that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But- So when you were first getting into acting, like, what was that experience like? Did you audition for several different shows, or how did it start out?
Well, I started doing stuff in New York, mostly extra work. I started taking classes. I went to a conservatory program in the city.
Mhm.
Even did some stand up comedy. Just trying to figure it out what I wanted to do. And um, I was an extra in a bunch of movies and stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
Eventually got my SAG card there, and
Did you go for like any genre initially, or was it just kind of like whatever was?
I didn't have the luxury of
Right.
picking whatever I want. I never really had an agent or a manager or anything like that. I was just kind of picking. Just at the time there were these things called like backstage, and I think it was called Ross Reports.
Mhm.
These different trades you could buy and submit your headshot resume to.
Mhm.
Half my resume was made up because I didn't have any experience in anything, so I just like
Yeah.
bullshit my way. And so
Just kind of winging it until it
yeah,
worked out. Yeah.
taking classes, so many classes. And I still like taking classes sometimes. I just took a class. What was the last class I took? I can't remember now, but I still take classes sometimes.
Yeah.
Just because I really uh, I like just getting on my feet and learning and just keep learning. And
It's kind of a
even,
lifelong thing, right? Like even though you may finish your degree and everything, it's still interesting and helpful, I feel like, to take, classes and get involved with that kind of thing.
well, it's the only classes I've ever enjoyed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a terrible student growing up, and I hated school so much.
Mhm.
And so these are classes that are enjoyable and fun, and I
You
feel like,
actually engage and learn something from that you're
yeah,
interested in. Yeah.
and I feel like I'm kind of good at it, and um, so it's nice to be like, oh, it just makes me feel like, okay, I have some value here a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Where are you,
What's that?
where are you from?
So I originally grew up in New Mexico, and then in the last year moved out to Tennessee. So I've kind of been uprooting, from childhood. But
Why'd you move to Tennessee?
well, my sister moved out here in 17 with her husband, who she met in Yellowstone, ironically enough. And so they were park rangers there and moved out, and they had a little one. So my family, wanted to get closer to them as well. And then with my muscular dystrophy and everything, there were some doctors that I found at Vanderbilt that, were supposedly, good for care of that maintenance going forward. So it's
Okay.
kind of, yeah, multifaceted, reasons
Yeah,
to move. But
you got a lot behind you now.
Yeah, yeah, which helps a lot. Yeah, but going to your, you mentioned you had a degenerative eye condition. Is it choroideremia? Is that the correct?
Yeah.
So what was that sort of experience and pathway like finding out and then, learning to kind of manage a kind of a progressive, disease like that?
Oof. I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
Um, I was diagnosed at 27,
Mhm.
but I had my grandfather was blind. I only knew him as a blind man, and he died when I was about 15. And ironically, maybe around that time, I started noticing things going on with my eyes, but never really pieced together that there might be something wrong with my eyes. My
Mhm.
family didn't really talk about that possibility. Um, so my grandfather thought he had something called retinitis pigmentosa. I don't know why he thought that. I guess because when he was getting diagnosed, they just misdiagnosed him, which is easy to do.
Mhm.
I think I was misdiagnosed originally with something else. I can't remember what, but maybe it was RP. And so so I was diagnosed at 27 because my brother was first diagnosed, and he's about 10 and a half years younger than I am, and he was
Mhm.
getting tested for all sorts of other things for different reasons. And I guess somebody looked in his eyes or tested his eyes and said something's going on here. And once he tested positive for choroideremia or something else, I think he was misdiagnosed originally too. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
It's been so long now. Then we all got tested. Everybody in the family got tested, right? So
Okay.
um, then I got tested, and I was told, yeah, you got something going on, and you should go to a specialist. And then the specialist told me I had choroideremia, uh, figuring out what that meant. So it was pretty jarring to say the least. Of like, hey, this is degenerative, and your eyes are gonna get worse.
Right.
Time, and eventually you'll go blind. That's the deal. So
Yeah. Well, it seems like it's one of those things that gets diagnosed a little bit later in life than typically. Is that kind of the
yeah,
trend?
I could have been diagnosed as a teenager, and
Okay, gotcha.
others are diagnosed even earlier. Sometimes it depends. I mean, it's a there's a spectrum to it. There's
Yeah,
people
that's
have it worse than me,
and more accelerated or less, just depending on how it manifests. And
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and when I was asking doctors like how long do I have, and they said
Mhm.
we don't know, but you could maybe judge it off of your own lineage. And my
Mhm.
grandfather went blind in his 40s, so they were like, maybe that'll happen to you too.
Yeah.
Fuck, and I could curse here, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Um,
um,
yeah.
uh, so I
Were
was,
the doctors that were initially, testing and doing the diagnosis and everything, was that experience like, were they respectable? Were they like sort of doom and gloom? Or did you feel like right away you had ones that maybe had some empathy?
God, I
It's
couldn't
been,
tell you because I don't. I mean, I don't remember anybody being especially empathetic or
yeah,
especially harsh.
just
Um,
kind of matter of fact, maybe, or this is kind of what's going on. And
Matter of fact, and I'm probably
yeah.
so in my own headspace of like, what? I wasn't paying attention to people's behavior. I'm more sensitive now to people's behavior of
Mm.
they say to me or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And I
But
know that you were involved in some, efforts to bring awareness to choroideremia, and you did. Is that what the marathons were connected to that you were doing before?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I always was trying to do something like that. That was, I didn't do much the first few years. I was kind of processing what was going on with me. And this was right before I moved to California. I had planned to move. Um, I was working multiple jobs on Long Island, trying to figure out my life. And
Right,
in my mid 20s, headed to my late 20s, going, what am I doing with my life? I went
right.
to school after high school. That didn't work out. And then it was just, I wanted to be an actor. So I moved back and was taking all these classes and everything. So,
Mhm.
but I was like, well, where's this going? And um, so I had planned on moving to Los Angeles, and but I needed money, so I was working all these shitty jobs just to you know get get the pennies together to move. And during that time, I got diagnosed, and I was like, "What does that mean?"
Yeah, yeah. That kind of throws a kink in the plans a little bit, at least, or at least a judgment or
Yeah,
adjustment phase.
I go, "Well, what does that mean as an actor? What does that mean?" So I was like really determined to still go for it. and I still kept my plans of moving that summer because I was diagnosed in March '03, and I moved, I think, in like June '03, that summer. Um, and just drove out, packed my car, just drove out
Yeah.
without really any plan. And and so it was definitely scary, and I didn't realize at the time how much my side effects would get affected, and
Mm.
that would affect my pursuing this career. Because one of the major side effects, one of the things that screw me up the most, is light sensitivity,
Oh, okay.
especially sunlight.
Well, I
So
can imagine that with acting and everything, with the cameras and the lighting and that would be a major
yeah,
challenge to overcome.
that's hard. But what I was doing extra work out here, and the last time I was going to do extra work, I drove. I was still driving at the time, which I probably shouldn't have even been doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I drove to do extra work. I forget even where, but my eyes were getting really sensitive to the light, and,
Mm-hmm.
and where we went was just like, I don't know, it was a nice place, but we were filming outdoors, and the holding area was outdoors, and where we were going to be actually filming was just in like this open yard, space area with no shade whatsoever. And I wear a hat. Once I got diagnosed, the guys told me, get a hat, get sunglasses,
Start
and
protecting the eyes from, yeah, from
that's what
light.
I've been doing since. Um, and I just remember being in my car, and I was like, where's this and where's that? Somebody told me, oh,
Mhm.
hold. I was go, where's Holding? He goes, this is it. And we're outside. I go, oh, fuck it. I
And
go,
then you're just stuck. Yeah,
yeah, where are they going to shoot? They go out there in like this bright, it's Southern California, so it's bright.
extremely. Yeah,
And I go, I can't do it. I can't do like a 12-hour day in the sun.
right.
Um, and I just turned around and I left. I just turned,
Yeah,
and that was hard. Um, and just kind of not knowing what to do after that. I'm just kind of feeling my way through life, and I still
yeah,
look at disability on camera of TVs and movies and that type of thing, and there's so little of it represent,
right.
whether it's like characters or even actors, right?
Yeah,
And there's very little overlap. Uh,
right, right.
it's
And
a,
then typically, I guess that a lot of people are cast that, as someone with a disability that, doesn't actually have it. Is that representation something you kind of would like to see increased?
yeah, I mean, I get it sometimes.
Yeah,
I get it if you want to get something made. Sometimes you can't get anything made unless a certain name is attached to it.
right.
That actor is interested in playing this character in all their forms of life. Maybe they play a character who's walking around fine and then gets into an accident and now is paraplegic.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Right.
So I get that. I totally get that.
Mhm.
My wife is on Daredevil. I get that.
Yeah,
Charlie Cox is playing a blind, quote unquote, superhero,
right.
but he's not playing a typical blind superhero. I don't I will
There's,
never be the blind person he is, because
yeah.
he has all these extra abilities, and
Well, and then like that sort of imaginary visualized world that you can piece together based on, the sound and everything, the way they present it's kind of unique, I feel like.
yeah, and I don't know. I mean, you could look for a visually impaired person like myself that can see partly, and that could potentially do some of the things he can do. But I mean, he was already cast before the show was even a thing.
Oh, okay.
They wanted, the guy that was casting saw him on Boardwalk Empire and said, "Oh, he would be a good Daredevil," and that was
Oh, okay.
the whole process. Uh,
Yeah.
so there wasn't any of like, oh, well, maybe we should look for a visually impaired person and just try to make that effort first. There's nothing like that.
Right.
But it's a tough it's a it's a tough thing, because there's people like myself who um, we don't get enough experience because of our impairments or whatever, our disabilities, and
Right.
um, so we don't get to hone our craft as much as we'd like to. So that's why I guess I keep taking classes,
Right.
but even that can only go so much. The real The real experience is in the experience and in the work. And
Right. And if you have fewer opportunities to do that in the first place, it's difficult to really master it or move forward with it, I would think,
it's a tough business, even
by itself.
if you've got nothing wrong with you,
Right.
or quote unquote anything wrong with you. But it's already challenging. It's already competitive. There's already too many people going after the same parts. And
Right. Just oversaturated, I guess, industry in some ways, so
yeah,
to speak.
there
Yeah.
was something I heard about of like there's an open call for people with disabilities of trying to get parts in TVs or movies or something. Something I forget exactly. I'm gonna mess it up. But and the person was like, "Oh, it was exciting because like there was over 500 applicants of people
Wow.
with disabilities," and I go, "That's great, but there's not 500 parts."
Right. Right. In fact, there's probably what? I don't know how many you could just have a handful maximum of.
If there's five, I'll be shocked. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Wow.
if
And then it's not sustainable financially either when you're trying to make that a
no,
career. I mean, that's,
no, you won't get paid anything.
yeah.
Well,
It almost seems like a thing where you'd have to know the exact right person, and an exact right situation to apply. And then that, brings in a whole lot of other biases, I would imagine.
you are able to make your own content, then that's what you need to do. And then that's a whole,
Yeah.
I would love to do that. I don't know how to edit, and I don't know how to. I took a documentary class workshop at a school, and that was fun. And you get a sense of editing, but like, damn, it's a lot. Editing's a lot. It's like a whole thing. It would take me years to learn how to edit.
It's a job by itself. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There's
Yeah.
I think there's a guy with autism that was able to make his own content, and he was able to get like a Netflix show or something and be the lead of it.
Yeah.
Good for him, because I don't know how how much work there is. When I was growing up,
Yeah.
I don't know how old you are, but there was a show called Life Goes On when I was growing up,
Uh-huh.
and it was about a family. Patty LuPone was the mother, and the son had Down syndrome, and they
Mhm.
used a real actor with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
He was great. He's never acted again, but uh, but it was really interesting. I thought, kind of ahead of its time of like,
Yeah.
and the show lasted several seasons. So
Uh-huh. And that character was in, I'm guessing, most of those
every episode,
seasons. Yeah. Yeah.
um, it was really about him. And
Yeah. Well,
so,
that's the other thing too, is like how do you persist, once you have sort of that one role, then it's like then what I would think, like how do you, it'd be hard to find roles, to be on after that point.
sure. I mean, if you're lucky, just get one. I think you're
Yeah.
just so lucky if you can. If I was able to get a television show, like I was like they're remaking or The Office, or they're doing some sort
Mm.
of Office spinoff or something. I was like,
Yeah.
my favorite show. I would love to be on The Office.
Well, that's
And
awesome that you're a fan too, because that's been one of my number one go-tos even
oh,
now. It's still,
but I would love to just be, hey, maybe they need a visually impaired character on there.
yeah, yeah,
I could do that for 5, 6 years, and if
yeah,
anything ever again, I'd be pretty stoked I got on that. Uh,
yeah. Yeah, it's nice, I feel like I've seen a little bit more and more, different disabilities shown in TV and movies now. And I know that there's, some that have like mild forms of cerebral palsy that have been on. And then yeah, there's a handful. So like you see very, very small incremental improvement, but it still just doesn't seem like it's scratching the surface of,
it's
of
it's
that.
well, it's slow going, that's for sure.
Yeah.
What's his name? R.J. Mitty from Breaking Bad.
Yep. Yeah,
Uh,
playing Walter Jr. That was really good. Yeah.
whatever. And let's see what else. There's what was that show Atypical. I didn't see it, but
Yeah.
like they made that show C on Apple Plus
Oh
with
yeah. Yep.
Momoa.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Auditioned for it a lot, many times, and I think I was really close to getting it, and then the pandemic happened.
So right, wow, yeah, that's not cool time.
Yeah, it was really perfectly timed.
Not that the pandemic's ever well timed, but
But
yeah.
so they cast. I don't know if you've seen it. So
I've seen like the first season, yeah.
it's a civilization of all blind people, and they would cast visually impaired actors for supporting parts. The lead roles were sighted people, for
Uh-huh.
Dave Bautista,
And I think was it Charlize Theron was in that one as well? I want to say
uh,
not her. Okay.
I didn't really watch it,
Yeah.
but that's another thing. I like with blind people. Um, there's there's never like a show or a movie where it's just like a blind guy just going through natural ups and downs of life like that. It's always like supernatural
Yeah,
events.
like a superhero type, like yeah.
There was that horrible movie that I hated, based on a book. I think it was just called Blind or something, and it was about a civilization that just all at the same time went blind,
Mm.
and then just they all just started murdering and like
Oh wow.
raping each
That's
other. And it was just like
that's extreme.
that. What the hell kind of movie is this?
Oh
So
man.
it was pretty disappointing. And I hear whenever I watch TV or movies, and I talk to my wife about this, I'm like,
Yeah.
the there's always the blind analogy. People use it in songs. People use it on
Mm.
stickers. People
Yeah.
in articles in newspapers. It's headline. It's on game shows. It's whatever.
Yes, you're right.
Always the blind. I hear it I mean, she and I will be watching TV on the couch, and somebody will just be just a random blind word. And I go, there it is.
Yep. You can always count on that one.
Yep. Always.
Oh,
That's the one that gets it the most. You never hear anybody goes, it's just like having muscular dystrophy.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And all these like things about, like walk a day in my shoes or things like that too. And it's just these assumptions and stigmas that are there, you can always count on it. Like even questions in public, like what's wrong with your legs? And, it's,
Did you get that stuff too?
I got a little bit, not as much as others, but I relate a lot to the assumptions about, being a wheelchair user and all those kinds of things.
How's Tennessee with that stuff?
I haven't been here long enough to know, and I'm a little bit in a rural type area, but the little I've seen the cities seem to be, pretty good, and I haven't gotten any real negative like comments or anything yet. But then again, I haven't been out and about enough to know probably. But
Your background is like a forest.
yeah, yeah. So that's actually right outside the new place I'm living. There's kind of like a rock cliff back there and some.
Are you in front of a window? Or is that like a green
It's
screen?
it's a virtual, but it's like I'm literally looking at that view right now, but then I use it as a virtual background too. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you are. That's a
It
lot that's what I want. I want more yard. I'm like almost butted up against my
like
neighbor.
you feel kind of claustrophobic basically on where you're located now. Yeah. Yeah. How about the fire situation? Were you able to avoid most of that, or did it impact you a lot?
I mean, we're in a good spot. It almost never affects us.
Yeah.
The only way it kind of affects us is we can smell smoke, or we can see it above our house.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
we got ash on our yard this year.
Does that impact your eyes a lot too? Like, does that bother
It
them or?
bothered my eyes.
Yeah.
It didn't get me too bad this year, but even if my wife is like, or if I do it, if I'm
Yeah.
cooking onions, or
Oh, making your eyes water and
my eyes sting. It's like
oh
lemon juice in my eyes or something. So I'm real
yeah.
sick
Oh,
of that stuff. It's so annoying.
I get
Uh,
that a lot too. Like I even in the mornings, like if I don't wash my eyes out, then they start really running and burning, and I can't really being muscular dystrophy, I can't really rub them or do anything on my
uh,
own to clear it out. But yeah, the eye sensitivity thing is just
do you have
it's
that because you're MD?
what's that?
Is your eye
You
sensitive?
know, I think it affects all muscles, right? So I'm guessing in some sense it's got to impact, the eyes as well. In fact, I just had a procedure last summer to fix a hole. I guess it was in my retina. They had to basically, sort of melt it back over the hole or whatever. But yeah,
Okay now?
it knock on wood so far, yeah, it's good, and then my grandmother has macular degeneration in her eyes, and so that's another degenerative thing going on. But, you know, managing all those things is not always easy,
Oh,
as you know.
I know. And
Yeah.
my brother's eyes are real bad. He's can't see out of one of them now, and uh, he's bumping into stuff and all that type of.
Yeah.
And my mom, she's a carrier, so the women become carriers.
Right. So it's
So,
basically an X gene linked.
exactly,
Yeah.
and exactly.
Yep.
And
Exactly. Yeah. There you go.
yeah, that's my
Yeah. I
comedy.
love that. Yeah.
The comedy class is kicking.
Yes. That's improv.
So yeah, so his eyes are not great. Oh, my mom's eyes aren't great, even though she's got some side effects. She won't go blind from choroideremia, but she's got
uh,
side effects going on with
there's
her.
some type
Can't
of
drive at night.
effect.
She probably shouldn't be driving during the day. Um, and then my sister's a carrier also.
Uh-huh.
She has two boys, and they both have it.
Okay. So
So
it's fairly persistent then through. through the yeah, it's interesting. Mine, I have no knowledge of any MD in my family before, but there's other conditions, I guess, that maybe were signals for that, but who knows?
I mean, is it hereditary, MD?
You know what? All I know is it's an X, passed down through the mom's side, but I haven't noticed anyone else going back to great grandfather at least. He like none of them had it, so I don't know. I'd have to do a little more studying to see kind of what's going on there. But
Interesting.
yeah, but I did want to kind of shift to into the. I guess you're a pretty big Marvel fan, not just of because of your wife acting in it and stuff too, but were you a Marvel fan early on? Did you kind of jump on that later?
Oh, when I was a kid, how old are you?
I'm 36 now. Yeah.
Okay, you're not too much.
Approaching 40. I like to.
Yeah, real slowly. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, but when I was a kid, there was like a lot of superhero cartoons, and we had the Incredible Hulk live action,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
live action, and stuff like that. And I was, I'd watch all those and get into it. And so I started collecting comics when I was maybe 13, and 12 or 13, something like that. And was just collecting. I've been collecting on and off comics and now other collectible type stuff all my.
Yeah.
When Deborah was up for Daredevil, I was like, yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you know her before she was cast in that role? Like, was that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've been together 17 years.
Oh, wow. Nice.
We just celebrated 17 years together. Excuse me.
Oh, congrats. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, we met in end of 2007,
Yeah.
and, off of Match.com.
Oh,
And
nice.
we were both living in Hollywood at the time, and she came to see me. Our first day was her coming to see me do an improv show,
Hmm.
and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. So when she got that role or when it was even up, for her to audition, I'm guessing things were pretty exciting with that. Like, how was that process?
I was excited. Well, it was a little scary for her because she was still doing a show called True Blood. And,
I honestly just started watching that this year.
oh, right, and it's a good show. And so
I'm late to the party, but yeah.
she was she was on the final season of that, and they were like, "Hey, are you interested in this?" And I think she did one audition, maybe, uh,
Hmm.
and they wanted her, and it was real like touch and go for a second because
Yeah.
they she had to finish True Blood, but they were already starting to film Daredevil. I hope I'm telling this right. This is very much secondhand now, but
Yeah.
they had to kind of wait for her for a week or two while she finished Daredevil. But I mean, True Blood. And once she did the last day of True Blood, she basically packed the next day and then
Uh-huh.
flew out the next day, something like that. It was real
That
fast.
sounds intense.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. So she was real nervous about it. Deborah likes to take her time and process things for
Right.
however long it takes. Um,
Probably wanted to wrap up True Blood and have a little bit of processing time to kind of
yeah,
reflect on that. And then, yeah.
that take a breather. But I was like, Daredevil.
Like, no, you can't take a breather.
Yeah, go do Daredevil.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, and
but
that was back when I guess Netflix kind of had the rights or whatever to that particular story or character or something too, I
yep,
guess.
yep.
Yeah.
And Daredevil was one of the first original shows they had going back then. They only had a handful of them at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Uh,
appreciate kind of a little bit, it seemed a little bit deeper, a little more in depth on the characters and stuff than, some of the movies that are out. So I kind of appreciate that.
that was great. I mean, I've seen that whole series several times now.
Yeah. Yeah. I was a little depressed too. And I realized that, they were going to stop that whole, kind of Defenders angle. And it's like, oh, wow, Disney's finally, they got smart and brought some of it back.
Yeah, I was happy with that too, and I was really bummed out that the Netflix shows because I really liked all the shows on Netflix,
Mhm.
and they just kind of they all ended on like cliffhangers basically,
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
and it
Well, and then
was
like what was it? Echo, I think, came out a year or two ago and had the Kingpin character in there too. And I was kind of like, hey, this is gonna maybe make a comeback. I was sure
yep,
happy.
Hawkeye had Kingpin in it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But yeah,
Yep.
the little darker, edgier side too is kind of nice. But
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's gonna be a good. I think it'll be a good season. It's come. The new Daredevil season comes out March 4th.
yeah,
Yeah, so now all that stuff's canon now, which is cool. And yeah, it's wild doing Deborah going back after like 7 years of not doing it, something like that. And
yeah, yeah. I would imagine she just picked right back up on the character though after you play that amount of seasons. Seems like
yeah,
it would come naturally.
that was a really good actor that way. So she
Yeah,
gets, she's, she always hits home runs, I think. So
yeah.
she's really great.
Yeah. And I guess you both, are you still involved in efforts with choroideremia and any kind of advocacy or anything on
I
that?
raise money. Oh, well, like you were saying, I guess I forgot this part. So yeah, I always try to raise money for Corderia. So I did lots of fundraising. So one of the things that I did was running marathons. So I did my first marathon in 2010 in Chicago. I was living there at the time for a couple of years, and then I decided to do 12 in 2012, and then I was going to do full marathons on every continent in 2016, but I only did two fulls and then five halves. But on every continent in 2016,
Oh,
and I've raised things online. I've sold things online, and I've done lots of different things to. And I did a lot of like produced comedy shows in LA and Chicago that raised money. So I'm
yeah.
always trying to think of something for raising money. And if it's not for the Choroideremia Research Foundation, it's for the Foundation Fighting Blindness. Um, you know, I'm,
Yeah.
and the Daredevil people have been really good, and they
Kind
sign.
of join in with the efforts on that.
Yeah, if I put stuff in front of them, they'll sign things for me.
Nice.
Um, they just all live so far away. So, uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, everybody's pretty cool about that stuff. So,
Yeah, definitely. That's great to hear that they're, involved and jump on board with that. Yeah, I guess kind of the one of the last questions I had is as far as just disability in general and kind of the that space, like what do you think would be kind of the way to get more awareness and reduce, I mean, I know it's a huge, systemic problem with ableism and, people being denied opportunities that have disabilities. Is there something you think would really like helping that change, or is it just going to be a societal thing that we have to keep fighting for endlessly, it feels like?
well, that probably, and
Yeah.
also there are so many people with disabilities that don't speak up in any
Mhm.
way. Right, my grandfather, who was blind, did not use a cane, did not use a guide dog. Um, didn't really talk about being blind. People just don't even. Not only do they not talk about it publicly, they won't even
Mhm.
talk about it internally with their own families. Uh,
Yeah.
they won't get therapy for it. They won't. That's a problem, right?
But like normalizing it and sweeping it under the rug in a way, I guess, so to speak. Like,
But that's no good.
yeah,
To sweep it under the rug. And I don't know if people just don't want to be quote unquote burdens, or
yeah,
there's a big segment of the population that if you say, hey, us people with disabilities would like to be respected and heard, then you're called a victim. Uh,
yeah,
that's a way to
yeah.
too, right?
Right. There is that victim mentality for sure. Yeah.
So that's not great. So I think it's really important to just speak up as loud as you can. Um, get as much attention as you can. I always
Yeah.
that for some reason people ask me for advice when they're going through something, and I say, well, one, therapy, and two, activism. So
Mhm.
either try to do something to raise money for your cause, because it
Mhm.
does really make you feel like, oh, I'm doing
It does
something
make a difference.
proactive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Even if you make $200 doing something, it's
Anything helps, basically.
you just did something. You did
Yeah.
what a lot of people do, and
Yeah.
that's really important. Like I went to Disneyland. I haven't been to Disneyland in a couple of years because the last time I went, it was such a horrible experience because I they have these disability passes, and
Mhm.
go to get that disability pass, you now have to prove why you get that disability pass.
Right. So documentation and
It's really dehumanizing. And I'm like, well, I'm blind. And they're like, yeah, so why do you need the disability pass? And I go, well, I'm a disabled
why
person.
is that a question?
And then they're like, but why do you need it? I mean, it's really fucking crazy.
Jeez.
And I got so mad. And the guy that was talking to me even made a blind joke to me. And I was so furious that I haven't been back. I just haven't been back. Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm really unmotivated to go back, even though my son goes there, and I'd like to see my son
Yeah.
play around and stuff like that. But I was just so pissed off about it because people just don't know how to treat people with disabilities. Or
Right.
something. I can't even go to a movie like at AMC.
And
AMC,
not have a comment about,
well, it's just audio description devices.
yeah.
There's always a problem with those. And
Hmm.
people don't know when I say, "Can I have the audio description device?" and they go, "Closed captioning," and I go, "No, audio description.
No.
That's a different thing." Like they don't even know what the training's just terrible.
Oh man.
They're terrible. And so I used to go to movies all the time, like almost every week. And now
Yeah. And now it's just like not worth it.
a
Yeah.
couple here maybe. And
I,
so
I I really relate on a lot of things with that because like even the wheelchair lifts or like you're either like right in front of the screen or way at the back,
oh
there's
yeah,
no it's just endless issues, and it's
I'll
hard
go
to even
I'll go places where it's all stairs, and I go, how's
yeah,
a person in a wheelchair supposed to
yeah,
get?
it's makes it where it's not worth even really attempting it in a lot
It,
of ways.
it sucks.
Yeah, yeah.
So I always complain, but it takes a lot out of me to complain.
I mean, it's exhausting, right? Like it's mentally taxing to even worry about that, I feel like.
Well, because it's not going to lead to anything.
Yeah,
These people don't care enough. AMC hasn't done anything. Disney
yeah.
hasn't done anything to improve that.
It's almost like unless it makes a big enough story or makes enough noise, nationwide or something that
Even
it just,
even
yeah,
then,
even then it's like barely a solution or attempt at best, maybe. But yeah,
fucking pain in the ass, man.
and there's new buildings that don't even have push button doors, for, I'm like, you just built this and, like, how am I supposed to overcome that hurdle? But,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's exhausting and a never ending fight, I think.
it's always a thing. It's
Yeah, yeah,
and I do hate it, and it is dehumanizing, and it does push people with disabilities away, and
yeah,
it's discouraging, and I get it, but in a lot of ways that means we have to kind of double down.
yeah,
But it's hard. It's I've gone to conferences with blind people, and
yeah.
dude, a lot of these guys are just higher middle age. They're 60s, 70 years. What are they? They're not looking for.
Not gonna have, yeah. Yeah, it just feels like a losing battle at times. And like if you're trying to live, your life and do other things too, I mean, you can't, it just feels like you can't put all of your effort and time into that if you want to do anything else. I think it's just a hard balance for me to figure out. But
It sucks. It just sucks. But
yeah, at least there's kind of that camaraderie or community that we have, at least that's something, back when I
well,
was in grad school, I wasn't involved near enough. And then since even social media, I feel like that community has been, I mean, that's been like therapy for me, to kind
that's
of
good.
realize that. Yeah.
I mean, with this new, I think we're on the same page here. Administration that's in the
Yep.
now, they're doing. They're. You think they're interested in helping people with disabilities?
It's going backwards. I
Well,
mean,
they're
there's
gonna.
like hundreds of years of setbacks already, and it's only been what, less than a month?
They would be very interested. They only are interested in taking away our rights and away our.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's that's not great,
Yeah.
and that's going to set us back. I don't know how much, but
I know. Yeah.
definitely going to put the brakes on for the next 4 years. But
Yeah, no doubt.
it's really
And
sad.
and hope, that it flips back after 4 years. I have concerns about that too. But
Yeah, me too.
yeah,
And how much effort is that going to take? Like how much damage is already going to be
it's
done?
already done. And
Well,
and with like a pen stroke. I mean,
yeah, and these
it's
people's quality of life and lives themselves.
yeah,
In 4 years, you can't bring back the dead, But
yeah, it's dehumanizing, no doubt. That's the only word I can think of right now with it. But yeah, yeah.
that's a good note to end on.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, no, I appreciate, jumping on. I know there's endless topics, that we could cover, but I, saw your page and I've been, looking forward to the new Daredevil thing and found out a little bit about, your efforts on disability activism. So I was
Thanks,
excited
man.
to reach out and visit with you on it.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for
Yeah.
now.
And for anybody that wants to connect or follow you, is there anywhere that you kind of ask them to go? I know you have a website too, I believe.
Oh yeah, well, ejscott.com is my website. It's usually working, and I'm on social media all over the place. I'm easy to find if you
Yeah.
yell at me or something.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I sure appreciate it. And I'll be watching Daredevil when it comes out too in about a
Me too.
month.
Me too.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Thanks so much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Have a good one.